alchemy was persecuted, he kept his real search hidden. And his search was for the philosopher's stone, which was, they would say, was to change matter into spirit. But instead they said, well, we're going to change lead into gold. You know, that sounded more material and mundane, but that was their real search. And then another great Basel scientist, Carl Jung, who was the pioneer of self-actualization in psychology, he was actually a medical doctor as well, was also very interested in alchemy, probably because he lived here in a city of alchemists. But Jung said that alchemy would find its philosopher's stone in man, which was kind of a sexist statement, but in human beings. So the philosopher's stone was to be found in our own inner transformation. But the third in this lineage that I'm talking about, from Paracelsus to Jung to Albert Hofmann. I came here in 1976. I was a 28-year-old hippie vagabond who had hitchhiked around the States, hitchhiked to India at one point in search of gurus, and finally ended up wanting to meet Albert Hofmann. I was really interested in the subject of LSD, and particularly interested in a subject, kind of a subsection of LSD, but I was interested in why LSD had changed its effects over the years, or seemingly changed its effects, what that was all about. So I called him up. My friend who I was traveling with had corresponded with him, and he said, well, meet me the next day on the Middle Bridge in Basel. So we went out there and we waited around for Albert, and after about an hour of waiting, we thought, he was an old man. He was like 70 years old, right? But up strode this guy about 55, he looked like about 55 or 50, real healthy and robust, and took charge of the whole thing, of the meeting, and took us and showed us where he had discovered LSD and how he'd ridden his bicycle from the old Sandoz building before they built the giant skyscraper here. And it was absolutely fabulous, and it shattered all of my preconceptions about of what hip was. I'd been a hippie in the 60s, but here was a man who was always, pretty much an establishment guy. He was a person who was vice president of Sandoz Pharmaceutical Company at that time. It's changed its name now. I don't remember the new one. But I came back from this trip changed in a lot of ways. And the next year I re-enrolled in the university, at University of California, Santa Cruz, in psychology. I left in political science at the end of my third year. So, and that same year, Jonathan Ott was putting on a conference on the book on Eleusis. And so I told him, that I'd like to have Hofmann come to Santa Cruz as well. I went and talked to my psychology department, and they didn't like the idea of a conference, but they said a small colloquium would be okay. And now this first slide here is the kind of an odd coincidence. I'm going to be talking about utopias a little bit later, and this was a woodcut that was done here in Basel, so it's kind of a little synchronistic, right? Now, so the next year, let me get rid of the notes. No, I don't want to slideshow it because it's going to just go on automatic. Here we go. So the next year we brought him to Santa Cruz, and my friend Peter Stafford made these posters. Peter Stafford is the author of Psychedelics Encyclopedia, and he printed up these posters and put them up all over Santa Cruz, and this was a free event. So I had a chance to show Hofmann around, picked him up in San Francisco and brought him down to Santa Cruz, and we had a big dinner. We had Allen Ginsberg, Sasha Shulgin was there, Ralph Metzner, Timothy Leary, and Baba Ram Das, or Richard Alpert. And they were all sitting at the table, and Hofmann got up and he said, I am the grandfather of LSD, and you are all my children. And so after dinner, we headed up to the campus, and there's a scene in Marty Lee's book, Acid Dreams, in which Marty has the scene of when I drove up Hofmann up to the campus, and all of a sudden everything was just blocked off. Now, the event was scheduled in an auditorium which held about 550 people, and it was all glass around the outside of it, but like 5,000 people showed up. And so we had to put speakers on the roof, and it was an amazing event. The fire marshals came, and they told me they were going to shut everything down, and that scene is how Acid Dream starts. So from that point, from putting that conference on, we became kind of like a beacon, of putting out this information about psychedelics because of what had happened 10 years earlier in the 60s. And I guess that a lot of that is the subject of discussions here at this conference. Now, you've got to remember that in the 60s, when the psychedelic movement started, now you have to make a distinction between the psychedelic movement and the LSD movement, because it really was an LSD movement. Psychedelics were just a catch-all description of a smaller group. Aldous Huxley took his first trip on mescaline. Yes, that's true, and they took psilocybin and so forth. But the reason why the psychedelic movement captured such great force was because it was like one of the great products of the Industrial Revolution. It was mass-producible in very small amounts. Its effects were almost no side effects at all versus side effects for mescaline or psilocybin. And so it basically was something that could spread and create a large mass movement. And so in the 60s, it did, and it started as a small group of intellectuals in Los Angeles and New York and London,